of owning a cafe and other heroic deeds by Beware the Chistaville. Chapter 36. Becoming Aware. To say that he'd been stunned would be an overwhelming understatement. However, as they'd sat there, the tots girl still sniffling into his sides, Shouta had pulled them closer regardless of the heat, his mind running a mile a minute. "Boys," he heard himself breathe. He tried, his voice a little choked. "Thank you," he managed, his gaze flitting from them to Dobby and Tomer in turn. This is... He floundered, his mouth trying to form how he felt into words. And then a cheeky smile tried to pull his lips while his teeth blinked back tears. "But you don't even know me." He partially laughed out, the incredulous look on the older boy's faces causing him to, albeit shakily, laugh a little louder.
"He's using our own excuse against us,"
the decay quirk user muttered darkly, those crimson eyes shining with feeling.
"You'll have to be punished for that,"
he warned. "I agree," Dobby stated, his elmisted gaze narrowed. "No self-depreciating for you for a month, young man, or there'll be trouble," he said, his grin fierce as they all began to chuckle together, the five of them soon laughing like idiots on the bench in some random quiet street 10 minutes away from the cafe, their arms and hands grabbing for and holding each other. "We'll be watching to make sure you're on your best behavior too, Shoni." As Sunday afternoons went, soldier style! This was a pretty damn good one. After they returned to his eatery, the five of them had marveled at the work that Jin-san, caramel-skinned in his early 50s, fit as an ox and just as strong, his lightweight boiler suit just like Oraraka's, spattered with plaster grout and ceramic dust, and Rio had done.
"Damn!"
Tomra murmured in awe, and hell, there really wasn't a better word for it. "Ma, so Shouta-kun, boss. What'd it do?" Standing before the wide archway that used to be the customer toilets, his smile widening at the desk bar bolted onto the part of the wall that had remained, where 4 electrical points for the computers he'd hoped to buy one day and 3 sets of shelves for learning resources and career pamphlets would be held, had been added. He could have stopped nodding his approval. Then, walking past the still dust sheet-covered repurposed study table, there was now room for another smaller table across from it that the middle schoolers might want to use. They stepped through the smooth, freshly plastered, thanks to the heat and all the windows being open, the gray smooth surface was dry and ready for painting, entryway with gasps. "Real, son," he breathed. For there, just as he'd envisioned it, was the carefully and precisely mounted glass wall, which featured a wide sliding door for humans to walk in and out of. Inside the space, the HEPA extracting unit could be seen on the wall in a wooden protective housing alongside 2 cleaned and replastered bay windows and a wide glazed door leading to one of the 2 bathrooms. Then, where they were stood, his cafe's 4th booth had been added under the other bay window, and there was definitely enough floor space for 2 more tables and chairs. The cat access desk that Tomoko would man had also been constructed outside of the door that held to the cat crate room. The other bathroom, the one that would be used by people who didn't enter the long, wide, currently empty cat enclosure, was positioned just to the side of that room, where their new feline family members would sleep, a room that 2 cat flaps had been installed in the bottom of its sturdy brick wall inside the enclosure. The cat flaps which would allow the felines to access their litter trays, food bowls, and water dishes. It was perfect, he murmured, still a little awestruck. Because that's exactly what it was. Already he could see the cats within the spacious home he made for them. He could see where the tree towers would go, knew where the soft scratch-resistant wipe-down chairs, cube stools, and beanbags would go, and, in his mind's eye, the back wall was already covered in various sizes, lengths, and heights of shelves. They would give the cats plenty of exercise and a high place for the felines to escape to if they didn't want human company, or in the case of the older cats, a place away from the tumbling exuberant kittens and their antics. God, he could hardly wait to get them settled. "Well then, Shouta-kun, let's give you and your boys a grand tour, nah?" At 1300, he'd made them all some lunch. Before changing outfits, Dressed up in their oldest clothes, Inko having jogged over to join them, paintbrush in hand, he'd sent her upstairs to where the boys were getting started and made his way back, his hands carrying 2 industrial-sized tubs of paint to the revamped space. He'd then pottered about with masking tape whilst the men finished laying the same glittery lead linoleum across the rest of the floor before adding the seemingly random but carefully calculated by himself and Ochako's similarly mathematically minded father shelves on the back wall, and since they'd had a few planks spare, along the side walls too. Then Ryo and Ginsan, their labors completed, had been sent on their way home at 1500 with cake and Nozu's number and email. The white-furred man had contacted him on Saturday and said that he was definitely interested in skilled builders. Apparently the high school he worked in, which he didn't name, built a lot. He'd insisted that the contract they'd made had needed to be reviewed and added 1,200,000 yen to what he'd already given them. He told them that the job they'd done was worth more. However,
Uraraka, you'll have to tell him no, because he looks too much like my boy for me to do it,
the older had grumbled. If we're having anything extra, Aizawa-kun, then I'd rather you keep your yen and let me and my kin eat for free when they visit every other month. That sound fair? He'd been flabbergasted, but at Ryo's endearing look, he'd sighed, nodded, and relented with, "As far as I'm concerned, anything you ever want from me is on the house." God, he'd felt like he was robbing them! "We've had a great time, honestly," Ochako's father had breathed paternally, a strong hand gripping his shoulder. "It's not wrong to let other people care for you in return of all the care you give them, you know." At 15:30, and bang on time for a change, the 3 pros, similarly dressed in baggy t-shirts, shorts, and flip-flops, arrived with paint, brushes, and some admittedly adorable cat-based stencils, their grins excited as they entered and smothered him in a group hug. Was it any wonder that Tomoko had gotten on so well with them? Dubby and Tomra, who'd come downstairs to grab more lemonade, had taken one look at the 4 of them, laughed, snorted, and taken photos with their phones, the younger teen saying,
"This is premium blackmail material right here,"
before leaving. Hilarious. "Do you guys want anything to eat before we get started?" he asked whilst walking them through the now dust-sheet-covered area. "A certain idol of yours is probably coming by at 4, so you're better off eating now." "What? No other way!" "You arranged for Ame to come by and paint?" Night-Eye squealed, her hands cupping her flushing cheeks desperately. "Oh, please tell me he's gonna be in cute tight dingities and shirtless," she cried, her body all a quiver, sharing a look with Mike and Cloud. The J9 man on the verge of losing his composure, those gloveless hands struggling to hold his laughter inside his sputtering mouth. Shouta rolled his eyes, shook his head, and led them to the area they'd be tackling. Between them, he figured the initial base coating should take around an hour, which would mean that a second coat and any finer detailing. He kept eyeing the stencils despite himself. Why hadn't he thought about making or using such things? Would take another hour, perhaps a little longer to do. This would also mean, if All Might and Sir Night-Eye weren't called away on actual business, that they'd still be able to help. He needed to keep his eye on the hulking blonde whilst he was here, though. If the Labrador stomach man was left to his own devices anywhere near his kitchen, then, well, he knew that all of his pre-made wares for tomorrow would be demolished, wouldn't they? "So, Sho-chan, what color are we starting with?" Smiling, his form approaching one of the cafe tables he'd thrown a sheet over, he grabbed and started passing out rollers, paint trays, and the magnolia mat he'd gotten in a sale. "This will give us a good base to work on," he advised. "Then when it's dry enough, we're going to have the same mustard yellow and dark cherry that's in the original eatery area," he said before his good tilting. "However, inside the cat enclosure, I've got us some special scratch-resistant wiped-out paint," he told them. "When that's dry, since you've been such a big help and so invested, I thought it'd be nice for you guys to put your own little touches in there with whatever colors you like," he offered with a mild shrug. "I'm going to let Mimi-chan, her friends, the study group, and the older boys do it too, so..." "Woof! John! You interfere for this world!" "I'm gonna do such a good job as well!"
How can you be sweeter than those amazing cakes you bake?" A think Dabby and Thomas' warning from earlier settling over him instead of pulling away instantly.
So illogical, he allowed them to embrace him with a chuckle. You guys.
He chuffed his tone actually fond.
Now come on, let's get started.
He ordered the three of them, comically, snapping off salutes.
The sooner we get the space ready, the sooner we get this cat cafe up and running.
Considering he'd been worried that the pros would get up to some kind of mischief, Shouta had to admit that he may have jumped the gun a little. Hey, look at me! Until, sigh, because of course, the cafe owner shook his head ruefully, although we couldn't help but smile, as President Mike, who'd been tackling the archway, turned around with cat whiskers painted on his cheeks, his smile devious, as the playlist he made for them started to sing out that strange cat noise song Inko had made him listen to once. Hey, it's supposed to be now, President. Yeah?
Midnight chortled from where she was kneeling on the floor, steadily and diligently doing the delicate bordering work.
No, I'm Nickel Mike, the pirate hero! He sniggered up over them laughing. And speaking of heroes,
he furthered, their painting having resumed. Loud Cloud was, of course, taking care of the tallest parts of the walls that sunk his body spread out on a small nimbus whilst he was filling in the bigger middle spaces.
Why did you never go in for it, Shou-chan? Is that's not too personal a question?
He asked, his lean form leaning down to replenish the paint on his roller. I'm not cut out for such a thing. He shrugged mildly, his body stepping away from block of white he'd just made to check that he'd not missed any patches. Besides, there's enough of you guys to go around, isn't there?
Yeah, I guess it's true enough. The blonde giggled before the topic clearly not dropped. It's just, well, with a quirk like yours, your intelligence and your skill set. Calabada, Midnight chirped. You can crack the top 10 so easily, he praised whilst looking over his shoulder, his brows waggling.
Well, that just adds to what I've already said.
The Raven Air man mused.
Popularity, opinion polls, ratings, and media circuses,
he said with a shudder.
I don't know how any of you cope with all of that mess.
He chuckled.
I mean, what's the appeal?
He pushed, genuinely curious.
When you reach that level, you don't get to live as you want. You have to live how your management tells you, right? He furthered, his brows furrowed. For me, I couldn't live under such scrutiny, and if it's not too personal for me to say, that kind of lifestyle makes me worry for you guys all might insert night-eye.
He admitted, his roller returning to the wall.
I mean, don't get me wrong. When people with dangerous quirks decide to play God, take what they want, and don't give a damn about anyone they hurt in the process, the pro-hero organization is a line of defense that we're all grateful for.
He offered.
But you're all human, too. You should all be able to have lives outside of the good work you do.
He argued before stepping away from the wall again with a critical eye.
To sacrifice everything for the safety of others is in itself a noble ambition, if a little much.
He furthered.
But to sacrifice everything for the chance to have an action figure, a fan club, and a movie deal, well, to me, that's what worried me about the whole hero thing.
He said,
people like you guys, Sir Night-Eye and All Might, if I met you when I was younger, maybe I would feel differently about such things.
He hummed.
You're also warm and genuine in what you do. I believe that all of you are heroes in the true sense. That you put your lives on the line for others selflessly and wholly.
He stated. The magnolia was drying just as he'd hoped. The premium plaster mix Ginsan had whipped up was fantastic. There were no oily patches or areas where the magnolia was seeping in or sliding off at all. Fantastic!
Doesn't stop me from worrying for you, though.
He heard himself say, well, his mouth and mind were prone to run when he was working.
Maybe when you guys have gotten a little more experience, it'll be worth turning your hands to teaching,
he murmured.
That way you can save people twice over by inspiring the next generation.
He continued, his mind conjuring up images of the three pros doing such a thing, his smile broadening a touch.
That might be a little selfish of me, though.
He sniggered.
I'd mainly want you doing such a thing to help and support my study group, yep.
Closing his mouth, a weird feeling tripping up his spine, Shouta looked over his shoulder to see that the pros had congregated around him. closely. Were they tearing off?
Are you guys all right?
He asked, his brows rising a fraction.
Are the fumes? How do you do that?
Loud Cloud asked.
That was so inspiring.
You really think that much of us? Midnight pushed, her features genuinely pleased and not lewd for once.
Shove! Seriously, are you a yogi or something?
Present Mike asked, a little bashful.
I mean, I'm gonna consider a kid compared to you when you're younger than I am. We are,
he reminded.
Yeah, you made me feel like we could do something about that, you know?
Of course you can. He nodded, still a little confused.
Why wouldn't you think so?
Oh, well at UA, we were kind of known as the Three Dumbigos. The bronzed man chuckled sheepishly along with his friends. Sure, we tried hard to get our licenses, but compared to the class rep and everyone else in our class, we were, well, outcasts, really. He shrugged. Midnight's always been so proud of herself and who she is, but other people tended to look down on her. He offered. Am I me? Well, let's just say that being loud and wanting to have a bit of fun wasn't something our teachers and the student body thought we should be doing. He elved.
I'm sorry that you weren't appreciated for who you are.
He sympathized.
But hey, you've proved them all wrong, haven't you?
He grinned.
You're out there making a difference, being pros, aren't you?
We could have done with you being the riddle shop, the woman cooed. I bet you were super popular at school, right? She smiled knowingly.
I'm afraid not.
He replied honestly.
I tutored some people for extra money and ran 2 clubs in middle school and high school, but I didn't have friends. Really.
He shrugged.
I was too busy for such things anyway.
He furthered before with a hummy returned to the wall.
Were you busy with your family?
Loudcloud asked, his tone a little pensive.
We've heard you talk about those little brothers of yours,
he continued, his tone fond.
I bet your folks will be pleased that they could rely on you, huh? My parents are dead,
he answered, his hand guiding the roller back to the paint tray.
My little brothers and I looked out for each in a care center a few blocks from here.
Wait, what? You were one of the kids in the Center Condemning Social Services a few years ago? Present Mike gasped, his tone distressed. Dude! Are you okay? I mean, holy shit, man! That must have been awful! He gushed, the three of them suddenly crowding closer.
Sure, I had no idea,
the white-haired man breathed.
Seriously, are you alright?
Blinking, he regarded them carefully, Dobby and Tomwa's words returning to his mind. They weren't being nosy, his mind reasoned, the way in which they were looking at him. Not with pity, not with sympathy, but what he realized was actual care, causing him to swallow a little.
It wasn't easy,
he said.
But it was a long time ago,
he reminded.
And I've put a lot of it behind me,
he told them, a smile pricking his lips.
One of the mottos I live by is that I'm not my past, and neither is anyone else.
He smiled.
It's the future that's important.
Good merciful heavens, that's so wonderful. Oh, sorry. Barking, the group turned as one to the archway. Why was he not surprised to see Nezu, white-furred hand snapped over his snouted mouth, Sir Night-Eye, a little slack-jawed and shaved-faced, and all night, his usual smile a little strained and overly sheepish like a kid with their end in the cookie jar, stood in the archway dressed in leisure wear. How long in the midst of there exactly? He had not heard the doorbell chime over the playlist that was now filling the strange, awkward silence thickening between them. It was illogical for them all to be standing around when there was work to do, wasn't it?
Oh, good, you're here.
He deadpanned whilst a smile stretching his lips as he gestured.
There's the paint,
he quipped.
So, let's get back to it, shall we?
The bros had gushed a great deal once the weirdness had worn off. The three intruders had deeply apologized for inadvertently eavesdropping. He told them to knock it off. They hadn't done it on purpose after all. And an amicable, conversation-filled work session had started. However, at 16:30 rolled around, he'd excused himself to get them all some refreshments because the open windows were sending the fumes away and helping everything to dry, but there was no denying the oppressive summer heat, was there? It was when he'd walked back out of his kitchen, a tray of lemonade in hand, that he'd been ambushed.
Ah, Shouta-kun, may I have a word?
Blinking up at All Might, his hands depositing the tray onto the service bar with a nod, the cafe owner smiled at them wryly.
This wouldn't have anything to do with another muffin order, would it?
He chuckled.
No. As wonderful as
The bronzed man stated, nervously, his noticeable flaxen hair concealed under a cap with the American flag on it. Of course. Whilst he rested his arms with muscles that were probably stronger than banded steel onto the work surface so that they could regard each other.
Sure. Do we have any... sorry.
Blinking, the bear looked back to Dobby, a few speckles of white paint scattered across his cheek as he froze, his smile dimming a touch.
I'll come back later. Oh, nope, please, Dobby, don't let me keep you.
The older man laughed. Was he blushing?
I had only meant to speak to your guardian on a matter that can wait,
he assured with a big wide smile.
I'll be away to get some more painting done. Oh, and I'll take these too.
He gushed before carefully grasping the tray. Once held, he then hurriedly scuttled back to the workspace, whilst Shouta and his lodgers shared a glance.
Well, that was weird.
The flame quirk user grinned.
Weird is relative, kid.
He chuckled back.
So, what was it that you needed?